They really are looking for a warm place to have a nest. They really don't. I've got ants in a lot of my colonies, and it just
doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. You know, you can chase them off and scoot them off with a brush and do that kind of stuff. When you're working around bees, move slow, be deliberate. Try not to pass your hands over the nest. If I put this in, I put it right in front of me, and I will pull frames out like this, and I'll work my way across, rather than passing my hands over. The less of that you do, the less cantankerous an edgy hive can get. So, I typically put my patties right on top of the frames. And the reason I do that is if it's cold and it's a long ways away from the brood nest, they got to get up to this and do it. So like if this box is empty and your brood nest is down there, we can put that baby right down on top.
Okay.
And I'll take a knife and split them into half, you know, and to give them more surface area. And sometimes I pull the paper off. They will tear this all up and haul it away. If a colony is small and it's just getting going, I try to help them physically as much as I can by getting this stuff close to them. So anyway, we'll leave that guy right there. Kind of sorta.
Yeah, they're probably not up here.
So yeah, he just put this on
last night.
Yeah, and so I always look down inside. You know, this is undrawn. Okay, the bees are just coming up from below.
Can you show the camera a little bit? So one of you take it out. It's just undrawn frame.
Yeah, brand new. Wax-coated plastic foundation. These comes in two colors. This is typically what you use for supers, and they have it in black because you can see the eggs really well on the black stuff.
Are the cells the same size?
These are all 5.4 millimeter
For black
cells.
and the yellow?
Yeah, they're the same size. You can get worker or you can get drone cells also. The foundation that's made out of drone cells is used to concentrate drone production on a frame, and you can use that to control mite populations. You can get a whole bunch of drone comb here, take this thing out once it's capped and stick it in your freezer and kill a large number of the mites in your colony. But if you've got them reproducing in both the drone and the worker comb, you know, you don't want to get rid of your worker comb. You got to deal with them one way or the other. But anyway, if you pull these frames out, some of these frames out, you can see the bees right down inside of here. They're crawling around on the frames below, and that's why they're on the bottom edges of these. But you can come up and just take a peek in there. But we haven't used any smoke on the colony. I'm not being banged. The bees aren't flying off this into my face or doing anything like that.
Let the camera take a
Yeah, so go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and get up there. Yeah, go ahead. They're not going to do anything.
Have you had any success with putting a western size frame in a deep box to trap drone brood?
They'll typically, just draw it out. They'll turn it into. They'll make drone brood because I use foundationless frames. My colonies have upwards of 20% drone comb in them, and what I do with the drone comb is I move it to the outer edges of if the brood nest was here in the middle, I take that drone comb and stick it out there. If I don't take it away, they'll raise drones in it when they want to, or they'll store honey in it. It makes great honey storage because the cells are bigger. The frames are actually heavier when they're made out of drone comb in a super. But anyway, what I always do is I shove my frames together. And the reason for that is that if you're going to do a honey super, okay, then I would use this space. I would space these out, leave like 1/8 of an inch between each one of them, because they will draw that comb out wider than the frame. I mean, it'll be like fat frames with the comb coming out, and they're easy to uncap. But when you're dealing with a brood nest, you want them closer together like that. It helps them thermoregulate the nest better. And then when you get into it, what you can do is you can pry a frame away like this, and then into that empty space and lift it out, and not roll the bees against the other frames. So just as a habit, when you're getting in and out of a colony, I have to go for them. So let's say I've got in here and I've got these frames and I've put them all back in. I'll run this up like this, okay, and then I'll run it back like that.
So I haven't been able to get my frames that close because they're like full of the bees.
Full of the bees?
Yeah.
Well, if you leave them apart when they draw them out, That's what you gamble with fat frames. So you get them as close together as possible.
No, it's not the comb. It's like the actual bees.
Well, just believe me, the bees will move.
Okay.
Just go slow.
They'll scurry. Yeah, like if you got a bunch of bees hanging out, don't be worried about squishing them. Just kind of move it in, move it in, move it in.
But aren't they going to build comb in that empty space?
No.
If
No?
you had left a space between them.
No, look at this.
Then they would.
I want you to see this.
But if you don't leave a space.
This is one of these oddities of equipment manufacturers. You can almost get another one in there. Can you do it?
If you had 9 new frames, you could probably crown them.
Yeah. See, you can get 9 of them there, but I tell you what, you put 9 in there,
And it's
they ain't
cramped.
any fun taking out that little bit of space.
Yeah.
Is a really nice deal. It allows you to manipulate your frames and move them. Okay. But the 8-frame boxes, especially, they'll be a little bit different in dimension on the width. Some of them are smaller.
Yeah.
Man Lake has a tendency to make theirs a little bit bigger, which doesn't hurt my feelings one bit. But I cut my end bars because I do natural comb. I cut these down so they're not 1 3/8, they're 1 1/4. So my space here is not 3/8, it's 1/4 of an inch. It's the way that natural comb is made. But and in that instance, I can put 9 frames in an 8-frame box because I'm taking a little bit off each one and still have room.
Right.
And I only do that in the brood nest. I don't do it in the honey
So I
super.
should leave space on each
Yeah,
side.
in your brood nest, I'd do this. Scoot them so they're centered, then they're all together, and that'll prevent them from building anything weird in the middle, and it'll give you room to work either way.
Right.
But that's like I was saying. We'll just use this as an example. Let's say this was full of bees, and I had them like this. Okay, I would pry this one away and that one away like that. Okay, and then use this, and then lift this up. Okay, and then inspect it, and then set this one. Some people try to go like this, and there'll be bees on the ends. What I do is I always go like this, and the bees can still be there, but I take them and I insert them like that, and that way I'm not smashing them and running them around. But I'll pull one out, and then I'll use that space to remove the next one, and the next one. I just inspect into the space like that.
Right.
And that way I'm not going across the colony and freaking any of the bees out that might want to fight. And then I always put them back in the same order that I took them out, in the same direction, because they are directional. So as your brood nest may be all down on this end, okay? And if you put this one back like that, you're going to have a bunch of stuff down like that. Typically, the frames, I'm going to move the last one back. Anyway, typically what you'll find in a brood nest, stores, honey and pollen, okay? Just think about it as a pantry outside of a nursery, because that's what this is. And sometimes these frames and a smaller one will also be partially filled with honey and pollen, okay? So at least the outer ones, possibly the next one's inside, okay? But these 4 frames in the center, that's where most of your brood's gonna be. Now that can vary depending on what you're doing. If you use Greg's cool box, what you've got inside of that box is this. You've got, you've got 4 separate colonies. If I divided these up like this with a divider in between each one. This colony here and that colony there are going to feel the warmth of these two. And their brood is going to be up against that. They're going to act like that's one big brood nest because they'll feel the heat. They'll establish that brood patch right against that warm spot so they don't have to heat it as much. So anyway, so be aware that if you have 2 little nukes and you butt them up side by side, the brood nests may be, against one another like that. When you open up, you go, oh, cool. This one's right here, and like if this was 2 brood nests like this, and there was a divider in here, the brood will be like that. This one will hug that wall, that one will hug that wall. But bees will do that. They'll do that to economize their thermal regulation. So it's kind of like an apartment house, The guys on the inside have the cheapest electrical bill. The guys on the outside are heating their space. So, but anyway, that part kind of helps you know how to physically work them. If you use foundationless frames, and let's say they've built comb out like this, okay, and they haven't attached it they need to attach it on at least 2 sides. If you're going to tip it and it's a warm day and you go like that whole baby may just flop right out on the ground. So the way that you do that is you roll it like this and turn it like that and inspect it that way. You rotate it on the attached axis and then you turn it back down. And it's just something you get used to do habitually. And that way you can kind of watch it, you know, and if it looks like if it's going to have problems, you can tip it over like that, you know, and you can go back like this, roll it, and then that way if it's full of honey and heavy, you're not going to bust it off.
So your foundationless frames are essentially those without the foundation in them.
Yep, I will buy. What they sell is there's different types of frame tops. They have a split top bar, and this they have a cut in this right here, and you can pop that off. You can stick in foundation, and then you put that little piece back in there and staple it down. But instead of doing that, I will take that piece and pop it off, turn it 90 degrees so the long dimension is kind of pointing down and makes an edge, and then staple it into place. And I just put that right back in the hive with no comb in there. That little edge sitting down is what they draw off. Yeah.
I did that with mine, and they broke.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When you find out you need it, you don't have to buy wax, because you know I've never seen a feral colony shop for foundation. Not ever. So yeah, and they prefer to build their own comb. The only problem you run into is getting them to build it on the frames. Sometimes you have to start them, and what I do is I'll take a frame like this, and I'll cut a piece of plywood, and I'll take a top bar and just put a piece of plywood the same, and then just nail that to it. And it's kind of a blank frame or a follower board. If you need to, you can put like a foundationless frame in there and a follower in there, and then a foundationless frame and a follower, and it gives them a straight edge to draw off of. Once they start drawing and you got some straight frames, you don't need those followers, but I make up 2 or 3 of them to get them started sometimes. If you don't have extra comb that's drawn out nice and straight, okay? So anyway.
Garrett.
Enough about working that.
You're gonna need to quiet down
now,
just a little.
what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take this off.
Thank you.
Okay. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to show you how I go from box to box. Let's assume that this box had bees in it. Pardon? No, we're going to not be smoking unless we have to. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll do this, and I will tip the box up like this.
Oh.
Now what I'll do is I'm going to look down here on the bottom edges of the frames. I'll be looking through the top on these frames to see if I can see brood inside or honey or whatever. But I will tip this box up like this, because what happens is if they're building swarm cells, they're typically on the bottom edges. I can see them inside here like this, okay? And you may see those on some of these colonies. But anyway, I do that inspection without even having to get into these frames. I can go box by box and kind of read what's going on, okay? So anyway, so I'll just take this one and I'll set it down over here, okay?
Even full of bees, it would be fine, just set aside?
Pardon?
Even full of bees, it would be fine, just set
Yeah,
aside?
you can set it aside. The alternate to this, if you don't have, you know, a lid that you can use, you know, I always use a lid for something. You can set them like this, okay? Set them on the ground and you can look at them, and that way your bees aren't running around in the grass and stuff like that. And that way you can just tip it forward and get a hold of it. And I like working off on my knees. I don't like using my back. I use my legs a lot to lift.
And that doesn't jostle larvae or anything, or too much
larvae are
problem?
all in their little
little
cells,
gel.
so.
Okay.
So looking at this, I'm looking for any faces on the perimeter here that are looking at me. They're kind of turned this way and that way, and you know, you can tell. I can move my hand like this. Nobody's pounding my hand. Okay. Ooh, there's somebody on a diet.
A couple of them there. Too.
Yeah. So that happens.
Yeah.
See that bee?
I know,
See
I
that bee
hate
shoot
it.
out?
I hate
See
it.
that bee shoot out? That one that just shot up
Jumped
and
out
is
at it.
flying?
Yeah.
That's a guard bee. Go ahead and get me your smoker.
Guard bees. Okay.
Okay. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is you. I'm talking about you. Take that. So, and just lightly around the edges. Okay, this is the colony proper. Okay. Okay. Now, you notice I'm not blasting them.
That one's carrying one out.
Yeah.
Undertaker.
Undertaker.
Undertaker. It's a dead one.
roofs off.
That's
There's a
awesome. I haven't
shortcut.
got to actually
Yeah,
see
there's
it
an
in the
Undertaker
hive
bee.
bringing one out.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, they'll spend all day dragging one bee out of a hive. They'll go round and round in an observation hive. I've watched them.
Aw.
So, but anyway, that's all I'm doing is just putting a little bit of smoke. Come on, there you go. Stealing the show. There you
There
go.
you
See,
go.
she dumped it. She'll fly back in.
What's your guys' X there?
It was on the
We,
frame
yeah,
when I bought
I
it.
just asked him, I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
It usually signifies the back.
A lot of times I do that with a
not-
swarm cell or something.
I'm not-
With a swarm cell, I know where to find it.
Yeah,
but-
yeah. And that's why good I have your journal out here. If you see stuff and you're not going to mark your frames, write it down. You know, always orient yourself to the front of the hive, left to right, frame 1, frame 8. But this is the test. You know, if they're flying up and banging my hand, they'll bang you first, then they'll bang and buzz, and then they'll lay into you.
Oh.
Okay. So if I'm looking at this, there's a way that I can work this that's a little bit different than I was seeing. I've got empty frames over here. Okay. Okay. So what I can do is I can take this frame out. Okay. And set it over here or back here. Okay. Take this one out. Okay. And I might want to change the side of the hive. I think I might do that. I'll go over here and I'll work into that space. So I'll go over here.
Don't take your stuff.
Okay.
I know.
And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully pry these apart, okay? Because they're going to use propolis, that orangish, gooey. And we're going to do this quickly. So they've drawn this out. This has got honey on it. There's some bright pollen. This is probably from dead nettle right there, that orangish pollen. But anyway, this is nectar. This isn't drawn out. This is getting gradually drawn out more and more. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's okay there. Nothing there. A little bit of drawn out comb on that side.
Excuse me, what does it mean, drawn?
Drawn?
What does that mean?
Okay, this is undrawn. This is the foundation that way it came. See how the cell depth is increasing? They're building wax and drawing that cell out. You can actually see it. You see that?
It's a lump, yeah.
Yeah. They're putting some depth onto it.
The wax buildup.
Yep.
Steve, can I have that? Okay, so when we hand a frame from one person to another,
Yep.
I can go right underneath them
Yep.
on the side. And then I've got it on the two corners too.
But anyway, you can look at this one. You can kind of hold this and look at it because there's
So if
nothing.
we look at this, we've got this beautiful pollen in here. We've got nectar around it. We don't have any eggs or anything in it.
Nope.
But we've got one cell that they actually kept. So in other words, the nectar they put in there, they were able to evaporate it down to the right percentage of water so that they would not preserve it.
They
So
put a lid on the canning jar.
And now they're,
That's
are
what
they
those
like
are.
drinking? Like what are they doing
Well,
when they're...
the smoke will induce them to drink.
Okay.
You know, it gives them
In case they have to escape from
the
fire.
sense that there may be a fire and we're going to
Okay.
be abscond.
So they're
That's
going
why
to
we
just
don't use a
start-
ton.
Yeah.
I don't use a ton of
Let me
smoke.
pass it around. So
I don't use a ton of smoke because I want to see what the bees
so
are
now
up
I
to. I
can
don't
go
want
to
them
you.
scurrying around. I may want to see, you know, it's easier to find the queen. It's easier to assess a hive when it's not agitated. And so if they'll allow me and the conditions will allow me, I'll just work slow and gentle with them. And so anyway, so that was an outer frame. That is a storage frame for resources.
And now you can look
Okay.
at it, and you can look at the other side. Since this
Now,
is
and
foundation.
I look down here, I look and I go, okay, do I see any brood, or as I see what I saw on that one? Yeah, I'm seeing open cells. I can't see what's in them, so I'm going to pull this one away. And it is, if you look down in here, just come over here and look right now. You can see how bees festoon. See how their legs are joined together? You have to look right in here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? On empty
camera
frames, this is a normal behavior. They will hang on a foundationless frame in a sheet like that, and they'll use it as a scaffold.
See the.
Yeah, you have to come over here and you look right down in there.
Means
Hold on.
See that, how they're hanging onto each other? Across, down in here? Yeah, but they'll do that this way on an open frame that has no foundation. And then the wax makers will climb across, and there'll be bees that are using the wax flakes to construct cells.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
Thank you.
They're like a little construction crew. So anyway, as you pull frames apart, you know, I pull on them, you know, slowly because I know that those bees are going to be hanging on. Okay, you'll actually see them dangling from the bottom like that. Okay, okay, I can let them off.
Look from this side.
or roll them back over.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. Anyway, this frame is going to be a little different. See how these cells are, there's a lot more of them that are drawn
So all
out.
mine are plastic, so I
Okay.
can flip them up.
This is a heavier
without
frame.
any problem.
Okay. And right in the middle of this, we have a queen cup.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe our queen that they
So see that odd shaped cell? It's a cup until there's an egg in it. Then it's a queen cell.
Wow.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm looking in there to see.
And what are they doing? What are they putting in there?
Oh, they're building it. I'm looking around it to see if there's any eggs that are laid in it. There are no eggs in the cells around this. This is primarily pollen, that orangish, reddish. Okay, and then there's liquid nectar in there that's being dried out. But I'm lightly blowing on them. I'm looking down into the bottoms now.
That makes them move?
It does.
Okay.
Too much makes them nasty.
Yeah.
A little makes them move.
Okay.
If you ever want to watch a fun video called More Than Honey, it shows you Slovenian and Bavarian beekeepers. They have these little cigars that they smoke all the time, and they blow the smoke at them.
Yeah.
But anyway, in
I had
this
to figure out how to see my frame from
in
the
this
cover.
comb, this is hard to see because this comb is well, it's also light colored versus down in here, down inside of these cells are larvae.
Oh, so there is a queen. Excellent.
Well, there's larvae. We haven't seen eggs.
Yeah, these aren't the problems.
There was a queen.
So what I'm looking for now what I'm looking for, if you look over here, right over here, look in these cells right in this area if you
I
can.
think they're just going to
You'll see eggs. You'll see eggs in there, little tiny rice grains in these.
Oh,
Right in here. See the little tiny rice grains in the bottom? I'll find one. Let me find one. Here's one right here. This cell right there.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a little
It's
piece
a
of rice in the bottom.
mini rice grain. If you see those, a queen has been in this colony within the last 3 days.
do you want me to take that?
Yes.
Yeah, we can just set it
Thank
back.
you.
Set it right back in there.
Can I look at the...
Turn it the other way around. There you go. Got it. So this is a brood comb. Come on, ladies. This is a brood comb because you can see oops. You can see larvae in here. They're like little crescent-shaped worms laying in the bottoms of these cells in here.
Oh, there I see them.
They're like little croissants.
Yeah.
And then the eggs are over here.
The orange is pollen.
They're little tiny white.
What is the red?
Pollen.
I don't think I can see it.
They're like a little grain of rice.
Small.
Yeah, they are. They're like a little grain of rice. Here's one right. This is one's pretty visible right here, off the end of this, right in this cell. See that little white fleck in the bottom?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think I do.
That's an egg.
See,
Okay.
and this is our the swarm he caught.
And what's this?
This is a queen cup.
This
Oh, I remember.
Now I'm looking.
in Longdale.
I'm looking at this cup. Look down inside of it. What do you see? You see some of that orangish pollen? Okay. They just built that cup in that comb because they wanted to. They'll build them all over the place. And when you see these, that doesn't mean that the hive is going to swarm unless you see a larva or an egg inside of it. And then it's a queen cell and they can produce a queen out of it.
Okay.
But
So this is
they,
just like
they can build them all over the
very
place.
preemptive.
That's right. It's like building a bonfire but not lighting it. Okay. They can build bonfires everywhere they want to until they light them. They're just this pile of sticks.
Huh, interesting.
Yes.
Can I hold it now?
Yes.
Okay. So I went around over here. And I'll walk around so that people who didn't get a chance to see it really well. Do you see their
Yeah.
queen cell
If you
there?
look, yeah, that's a queen cup, but their eggs are little tiny rice-like